Recreation Commission meeting Wednesday, July 29th. Call the order. Call the roll.
Ms. Pierce?
Here.
Ms. Shephers? Here. Ms. Donendo?
Present.
Ms. Jones?
Here.
Mr. Holton?
Here.
Mrs. Burdick? And Chairman Yem.
Here. We'll welcome Ms. Pierce as our new alternate member. And I know you've attended one or two meetings, so you should know how this works. Very easy.
Oh, absolutely. Right.
Just talk whenever you desire, pretty much.
Okay, thank you.
Next thing, approval of minutes, May 12th. Anybody have any? Has anybody read them?
I make a motion that we approve.
Okay. Is there a second? I'll second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous. Citizen input. This is going to move quicker than Rob thought. Workshop discussion. All right. Let's see if I can get this. Whoops. This is a very quick PowerPoint I put together. And what we discussed is we will probably do 3 public workshops on this. The discussion will be about potential uses of the land currently occupied by the city power plant. And we had initially talked about doing meetings like every other month. And I think because of what I've been made aware of, delays of getting access to the land is not going to be as quick as anticipated. So my thinking, and we can talk about it at the end of the meeting, is to schedule the next workshops, probably like one in November and one next spring, to give the public greater opportunity, to participate in this. My understanding is there's really no urgency right now in getting it, it's just getting the process moving and for people to understand the process, I think is where we're going with it. The process was initiated by Paul Bittenboss as a fine commissioner. He made a presentation to the city on May 5th about what he thought, use of the land and the opportunity to use fine money, which is the Florida Inland Navigation District. There's, some money available through that to do things in the future with it. And this is the parcel that we're talking about. Now, I'll come back to this just so people can have something in reference, on what we're working with. This, I don't know, you can't do it on this, but it's roughly 600 by 1,200 feet. And these numbers came from David Gay, who is the city surveyor. So it's approximately 17.9 acres. I will mention that tied into this is also potential use of the water and sewer plant, which is at least 5 to 10 years off of doing something with that, before that land would be available. My understanding is the power plant land, some of it will start becoming available next year.
Next year?
Wow. Yeah, but it's small pieces of it that is not being used.
Ah.
And I think in particular what I'm getting out of this is maybe the waterfront property could possibly be available. And then as they start decommissioning, which will take, 2 or 3 years, they can do it quicker than that. But I think an issue on decommissioning is money. Who's going to pay for it? When you get it. Plus, I think right now, FPNL just put a year hold on it, didn't they? As far as before the release of the land. You can be involved very much in this discussion.
Right.
Now, there was not a hold. What we have done in our contract with Florida Power and Light, there was a sense at one time that we wanted the substation moved off of the site where the power plant is located. So we were holding another site that was in the close proximity that would allow that to occur. We did a phase one on our optimization study to come back and look at the facility where the power plant sits and what would be the highest and best use, and how would you get the land prepared for that highest and best use. Well, the highest and best use is commercial, residential, mixed-use type, but unfortunately you would be at about $5 million in the hole by the time you took the plant down, cleaned up the site, and all these other things prepared for that type of activity. The other side of the coin is that you could take and make it recreational where you don't disturb the undergrounding part of it, and you probably would not have to meet that expectation, but you would still have a negative number. Taking the plant down obviously would be a cost factor that somebody would have to absorb. And then you also have the issue of the substation. With 17 acres, we feel like that you could probably locate that substation on that site and still use it for recreational activities and not be encumbered in that respect, and save the city a considerable amount of money in that activity.
Yeah, but how soon before you can start decommissioning the power plant?
Well, number one, the city would have to take a position that we would accept the substation being located there, and that way we would determine what is there. The other is that we have already made a request for transmission to make sure that we know how we would import power if we decommission the plant, take the plant offline. We've made taken steps to that effect already. We've taken 2 of the 5 units offline. We have 3 units on. One of them is unit number 1, which is a relatively small facility. But if we get, and we have an RFP out now for purchase power agreements, and if we can have the transmission capability to either come from the north or the south, depending on who we sign a contract with, get that transmission in place, which means that it could be the placing of a transformer at a substation, upgrading some transformers. We don't think there's that much power line construction. That shouldn't take that long, and hopefully by sometime in 2016 we would have the transmission in place, a power supply contract in place that would allow us to decommission or really encapsulate that building and not use the generation anymore, but understanding that part of the substation's inside that building, so we would still have to have the building standing, or a great portion of it standing. And then, but we could abandon, for example, the fuel tanks in the back and some of those type of activities.
But if you parcel this out, what's available at a time, it sort of precludes the opportunity to put in a whole development, something that was bigger than a little piece at a time.
Well, I think part of this discussion is going to be you can do waterfront development, and then you can come back in and do, we'll throw up some of the other,
Now, you got to remember, waterfront development, as Dick, you and I have discussed, and others know, that's pretty shallow out there. And even where they had where the barges used to come in has now silted over. But there is a canal that it would be on the south side that would allow for deeper water vessels to go in there. But the part directly in front going out to the Indian River Lagoon is fairly shallow for any real type of boating activity in that respect.
But you probably could start working on development of that waterfront, right? It's the property separated from the whole.
Yes, and you could put in activities there that would take advantage of the beauty of the Indian River Lagoon, but it wouldn't be anything like a marina, as an example, unless you did some dredging.
Well, let me show you. I don't know if you got this, if you saw this from Paul.
Yes, I did. I got it in an email.
Okay. But you see in there that there is money available to dredge, 50%. So
50%, that means there's another 50%. And if you look, it's 50% on the design, which means that you have to be ready to put a design of what you're going to do there.
Yeah, I think you have 3 years to construct once you do that.
Yeah, but it does require another 50% of matching money. I mean, it's good, and fine money is good. We've used it in other functions. For example, the conversion of the restrooms out at the baseball field on the barrier island to the step system is one of those projects. They helped us redo some of the boat launching sites over there in the park. So we have used fine grants, but the question is that they still cost money to do those type of activities, and we would have to identify some type of revenue stream. But I am familiar with that. I think what precipitates this, though, is you have to have a land use plan that has been adopted, that it's got a projects that you could go and make your application for, but it's got to be in a planning document of some type.
Well, my understanding is after we go through the workshops and everything, it goes back to the council to do their RFQ for a land planner.
Right.
To
And the land
incorporate
planner,
some of these ideas.
That's true. And the land planner now is not covered under the fine grants.
No, I understand that, but it's this thing is so loaded with different steps.
That's great. There are several steps.
All right. Well, let me move into.
Let me ask a question first.
Sure.
Was this meeting publicized that we were going to do this?
Advertised, yeah.
Like in the newspaper, there was an ad that said because it doesn't seem to be a lot of interest. Are we hoping to get more interest later?
Yes, it was advertised actually on a Sunday in the front section of the newspaper.
So, but again, we're going to do two more. We're all season to begin with. And I think as you get closer to people realizing it's going to council, the last meeting should be very busy, like if we do it somewhere like February or March. Because I think the public's next access will be to come right before council, right, which is what you're trying to slow down here as far as the number of people, coming. Come on up, Jay.
Unfortunately, Jay Kramer, Vero Beach. Unfortunately, a lot of times during these processes, you get a lot of people that kind of wait, and then at the very last moment they pop up and says, "Well, gee, did you think about this?"
We get a lot of that.
And then everything just turns upside down. We're trying to just get the word out there that this is becoming an opportunity, and we really want the public to tell us, what do we want done with this property. It seems like this piece of property has been the subject of an awful lot of attention for the last 5-6 years, and now that it's become open to some other options, I would have expected a lot more people to have offered in some suggestions.
And maybe if we had gone the publicity route instead of the advertising route, like telling 32963 we're going to be looking at what to do with that property, maybe they would have written a little story that generated some interest. I know they're interested in that property. I read about it all the time.
You're probably correct if the goal is to get the public involved, and we probably do need to do that. That's probably a correct thing to do.
I also think if people really, people who are interested are probably keeping up with it on some level, aren't they? The people who really want to know what you're doing, and it'll be in the minutes, and it'll be. It's an awfully good piece of property, and I would have expected a lot of people to have a lot of different ideas, and that's what we're really trying to do initially. I think you're right. I think a lot of people may want to be waiting and seeing what we're thinking about doing, and then they'll come in and give us their ideas after.
Well, if you if you're not afraid of taking a little criticism, make some suggestions that set a direction. It's not you can change it later on, but if you set a direction. Then people will respond to it, and then you might get that feedback that you're looking for.
Maybe the next time we advertise it, we'll put in there what we already have for suggested uses. And
well, if you put a casino in there, I'm sure you're going to get a response. I can just tell you that.
It'll get them talking.
And it does qualify for recreation, right?
Oh gosh.
Some people I talk to, they tell me that. But I think if we put in already the ideas that we have, then that might push people to participate even greater, knowing that it's going in that direction, if they don't participate, that it's already moving. And I think the urgency is, like we talked about, you can break off some of the land, like getting the Marina Commission involved in doing, the waterside development, and just starting to get some things you can move on, which will move everybody else.
That might not be a bad idea, is to put it on the Marine Commission's agenda and just have them ask their opinion on it.
Well, I'll give you my thought. Looking at all of these are the suggestions that we came up with at the last Recreation Commission meeting in June. And I would say more than half of them are water related. But on the other hand, and I think that's like the water park, the amphitheater, facilities for large events, and the community center possibly. But my thinking is we can split the land because it's in, I guess, the city charter that it has now to be recreation oriented. Otherwise, you got to go back and change your charter again, which I don't think you're going to be anxious to do. To get it released from the recreation use. But for instance, if the water related are just along the water edges and like the top maybe quarter is, you can put a marina in there, and one of the suggestions was marina and restaurant. Somebody said, to include. I think it's been expressed also that whatever we put in here, you're looking for something that will generate money to pay for itself.
Right.
Rather than, and even if you have to dredge and pay 50%, you may have to go to a revenue bond or something like that for 50% of the cost and pay it off from the proceeds. At least you have a source other than taxes,
right?
To pay back the bond. And then we had also, this is what we had talked about in the last commission meeting, that for the development, if you come in with a water park or something of that nature, that you would outsource the operation of that with the intent of that person paying for the development, of it. So virtually you're trying to look for something that's not going to cost the city, other than you got to figure out how to take down the existing facilities.
Right. That's an interesting question. Could you contract with somebody that provides, a private business that provides recreation?
Like the dog park. I mean, you leased it to them, but it was up to them to spend the money to improve it.
Well, financing-wise, you might be able, if you can lease the facility to somebody with their pledging X number of proceeds to pay off a loan, that may have to be taken out to develop it. Mm-hmm. I mean, obviously, we're right on the very fringes of a discussion, but I think there are all kinds of opportunities available, funding sources, especially right now if you can go in and get the money cheap. 3% is cheap money.
Maybe we'll get clarification from legal on that. If you could do something with that property with a private business, whereas the proceeds benefited the recreation department.
Yeah. On a lease basis.
Well, we'll kind of.
Well, you have to explore whatever. First of all, it's going to be whatever the third party really would be interested in, doing with.
Do you have any thought on that?
I hate to be a cynic, but I'll make the same statement I've made before. We are terrible landlords. We are just absolutely terrible landlords. Diesel plant stands as a fine example of our being a landlord. And we have a lot of $1 a year tenants that are good. We have an insurance agent that is renting a building from us, and during the last 3 inches of rain, he had most of that inside his building as opposed to outside of his building. We happen to own the building. And so we have not a real good track record. Now, if we could find someone to run an activity, and I agree with Jay, I think the city attorney has to weigh in as to where that is. But, Mr. Chairman, no offense, if we floated a bond and expected our lease to pay for it, I know what happens in those deals. So I'm not really excited about signing on to that. But if there was some way of structuring a deal where somebody came in and invested the first dollar investment and take the activity over, then, that to me would be a much better way of doing it.
Yeah, I don't think, have we looked into Martin County's water park yet?
Sailfish?
Or Sailfish?
Not yet. Well, we know that they're a revenue-producing entity, but we haven't looked into that one because that's a really good-sized facility. And when you're looking at what's going on right now with this property, it's going to be I think it's going to be a pretty good amount of time before you even get to use the whole 17-acre piece. So I don't know if that would be something.
The whole 17 acres. Now, how much you have to set aside for the substation would be relatively small, probably 1 or 2 acres, and you could move it. Again, that's a cost factor of moving it out of that building and constructing on another portion of the lot. But in order to maximize the use of the lot, moving that substation out and toward the Indian River Boulevard and up in that corner would probably be the best location, and that would be premised on the fact that somebody's paying to take the building down.
Well, the other idea is once you take it all down, let me go back to these suggestions here. The amphitheater would be more like an open park concept, just using it on special occasions, which would not be
income generating.
Well, you could charge
once in a while
for events, but you're not going to have one every day. It's not going to produce as much money as a water park, I don't think. I think one thing we need to do is dig in. I don't know, Rob, do you have access to that, or we can get somebody?
Yeah, we can find out. I mean, again, I know that the acreage of that facility is pretty good size. So, I mean,
Well, one of the issues on water parks is that they have to dig down.
Go down.
And that strikes into doing a couple of phase 1, probably a phase 2 environmental. Now, the good thing about the site, the test wells, we've shown no leaching of any environmental issues. We have no records of any environmental issues that have taken place on the site. But once you start the soil disturbance, then that brings up other concerns. It is a power plant site for 50 years.
Yeah, I'd be surprised if you don't have some environmental issue.
We've mentioned the year a number of times, 2021. So are you giving yourself 5 to 6 years to really decide exactly what is going to happen to the property? Or can it last that long? We may cut it shorter than 5 or 6 years?
We could cut it shorter once we get the electrical solution, i.e. the transmission and a power supply contract that allows us to abandon the power plant from that point on, and I am hoping that that'll be in the first half of 16. I think we're really that close. But if we can get and say, okay, the power plant, all the generation facilities are coming offline, and you have the substation standing there with a building, and what we're being told that the security of the building just means going around once a day and making sure, because we will take everything out of there. There'll be no oil on site. The valves for the gas will be closed and all that good stuff. So it would be just a building standing there. And
so
then
2021 is an end point. You just definitely don't want to go any further than that. You want to get it done before then, but 2021 is it.
Well, we're still going on the building.
Everything done before that even gets here.
Well, hopefully we will have transitioned it out of the power supply inventory, except, again, for the substation. And once we do that, then we are free to try to figure out what we want to do with the property at that point. And then we just have to do the cost-benefit analysis. And like I say, we have that phase 1 study of the consultant who came in and looked at it. Now, one of the things is he looked at it similar to that of what Fort Pierce, they decommissioned their power plant. And they're still in the environmental cleanup. But when you decommission the plant, and if you go to set a standard for demolition of the building and what your proposed use will be, that determines how deep your environmental cleanup has to go. And in Fort Pierce's case, they wanted it for single-family residential. They turned it over to the CRA, and they're looking at it as a redevelopment property. If we were going to come in there and do stuff like a boat ramp and tennis courts or something like that, then what you're doing is encapsulating, which is allowed. And so therefore your cleanup requirements are much, much less. Similar to using the diesel plant. You know, we had to go in, put in test wells, monitor the flow of the water because there was contamination in the water, and to make sure it wasn't leaching off. And then after about 7.5 years, we finally got from the state a no further action requirement because it had self-cleaned up. There was nothing else polluting the groundwater at that point, and it wasn't leaching off site, which helped us in that particular case.
Jim, what happened with the post office property?
The one downtown?
No.
The
one
old,
across the corner, yeah.
The old post office site.
Yeah.
Well, what that did is it got entangled in our contract with Florida Power and Light. We were told, we were working on the assumption that nobody wanted the substation on the waterfront property. Right. And so we had to find a location because that substation is critical to the network, no matter who's running the electric service. And so the closest was, and the only piece of land we really owned was where the old post office site was there on Indian River Boulevard. So we dedicated that as to the new location if we relocated the substation. And Florida Power and Light really didn't care one way or the other. It's probably cheaper leaving it where it is because then the only thing you're doing is keeping the building. You take part of the building down, but your substation, obvious relocation is much cheaper. And moving across the street had cost implications, but they were willing to do that and to get it off the site. But again, with that Phase 1 study, I'm not sure there's any real need to move that substation.
Didn't you have a developer that was interested in swapping?
Yeah. To a place
well, we
across
did, and now his was behind where those office buildings are.
Right.
But he wanted the old post office site, and then he was going to give us that site behind his buildings for the substation. And in my opinion, our old post office site has a higher value.
Oh,
now,
certainly.
So we were talking at the time, and that he would be interested in paying market value and all that, but that sort of went to the wayside when the contract for the power sales has sort of really slowed down, and we don't have a real execution date of that to occur.
So if it ends up that you end up keeping that property diagonal from the power plant, there might be a way to incorporate that in this plan. Not necessarily for recreation use, but for businesses that could benefit from being close to this plant.
Well,
this
my recommendation, and Jay and I have talked about this, is we sell that property and the proceeds from the property. And there have been 2 or 3 developers who have contacted my office asking about the development of that and doing it. One was a retail, to sort of tie in with what Miracle Mile's doing, and having those type of shops in maybe specialty shops. The other was a Cumberland Farms. They had contacted us about setting up there. So I think that site has a marketability that it would be good if we put it out with the request for proposals and for purchase. So having it tie in to the projected use of a recreational facility, I'm not sure. I don't know what that connection is.
Yeah, I'm just thinking you've got the electric plant, and then you've got the water treatment plant, and both of those are going to get taken down. And then you've got the property across the street. I mean, you do something really good with those 3 corners. Maybe some high-end condos that'll be across the street from this great little marina with all the cool restaurants and.
But you got to remember now, under the charter provisions, we just can't go out and sell that property.
The one on our side.
Yeah, the 2, the wastewater power plant or the wastewater treatment plant. And so when we talk about cool restaurants.
Yeah, no, I wasn't talking about. I mean, we could. We've had one restaurant over on Beach or Ocean Drive that's been going for a long, long time, and I presume they're good tenants. I mean, I'm sure we could get a higher end, some higher end restaurants right on the water, that could pay good rent. There's nothing in that area right now. No place to. And then enjoy the water park across the bridge.
just remember what I said about us being a landlord, even for higher upper end restaurants.
Yeah, but you're tougher than previous city managers have been.
But we do have one, but it's but that is a tough business to try to get in and pledge anything to. But
yeah,
again, I think what you're doing and trying to venture out and get some ideas, what can we do with that property, obviously has to take in the land use around what we're doing. But again, for going back to the old post office site, I think that's a very good marketable piece of property, and we are talking in our budgeting process about how you take some of these assets and turn them into capital in order to meet some of the capital needs that we have up front. And that probably stands as one of our biggest gains right now.
I just don't see Cumberland Farms as being something high-end that would, presumably add to what we're doing over there.
They're not high-end, but they pay a lot of taxes.
They pay a lot of taxes.
But again, that's just one option. It's got one of those locations that has the benefit of everything. Again, Miracle Mile. You could, have some type of grocery there that would be specialized that could go into that location. You could have specialty shops because it's filling up there on Miracle Mile. And if you look just down from where Publix, where the Bonefish is, I think that's full occupancy in there now. So now there's some vacancies across the street at Fresh Market. Hopefully they'll fill those.
Not a lot, yeah, a few.
Yeah, it's the one right next to Fresh Market's about the only vacant. So it appears that the demand is there. And again, the developers that I talked to, that's what they were looking for, is that they could put something like that into that location. And just, again, tie in because of the themes. And that would meet your higher end market.
Okay.
All right, it's thinking hat time. What do we have as far as suggested usages to add to
the list?
You have any suggestions?
I'm not that creative, so no. But you can see what the theme is, and I think that's important to keep the theme. And I wish you the best of luck if you could turn it into some revenue producer. I really do. I don't want to be the guy standing here and being very cynical. Our experience has not been real good, and it leads me to that situation. And so it's one of those that you've got a piece of property that's got waterfront, which water attracts for everybody. That's just the nature of being human, I guess. And it's what type of activity are we good at providing that are going to go in there. And 17 acres is a lot of property, but, you're not going to get 4 restaurants, as an example, in there, especially if you have a substation sitting there in the wastewater.
Based on your budget meetings and Tim's participation, for where you quizzed him about his operation, marine operation, that season-wise, my impression was he's running pretty much full capacity now during the season.
If it wasn't for debt service, he'd be doing very well. But his debt service, he's marginal break-even business.
Yeah, but I think also the big boat storage facility, would you pay $2 million for that?
Yeah, you're talking about, that's the insurance building we own too. We own that.
I thought that was separate from.
It's 2 partials, but that was part of the same debt service.
Okay. Was it $2 million or $4 million? I can't remember which.
The answer is I don't remember what the debt.
But
it's up there.
Yeah, we still owe about 15 years on it.
Yeah, but my impression of listening to your discussion on it is that facility now is generating above break-even income.
No, sir. If you look at the financials of it, we have very little money to put back into capital on that, even with the demand that we have. And this type of site, even with 50% match, you're still going to have to do debt service in order to dredge the front to try to build another marina. And the marina, in my opinion, is one of those benefits to the community and stands as a benefit of the community. But in realities, if you look at the spreadsheet on it, it's a marginal break-even type of business, even with the year that we had with the boats. And we had a fantastic year, but we couldn't patch the wood on the decks there for a couple of years.
Well, I think, where this would lead to is to expand the marina, and especially to take advantage of all, the waterfront capability.
Yeah. And the Marine Commission could enter into that conversation. I think that's a very good idea.
I think they should. Yeah.
And I think the Marine Commission chairman was the one sort of looking up and down the waterfront, trying to come up with some ideas, and you attended those meetings in which they were talking, because we had the rowing association that would like to be on the east side of the
yeah, but that's pretty much what came out of that meeting, as you know.
But this would expand, and they're much better talking about marine expansion, if that's the marina expansion, if that's what we want to do. But
well, is there a need, you think, for additional boat ramp? I mean, that seems to be a push I'm hearing too.
Oh, the boat ramp, yes. I think, especially on the east side of the lagoon, we lack boat ramps over on this side of the lagoon. So I think the boat ramp idea is a good one too. I mean, and especially if you take advantage of that canal that runs on the, I guess that's the north side, that seems to have the deep water and trench that goes out to the center of the lagoon. Probably would be where to put some type of boat ramp in that area. But the boat ramps seem to be well used. We have our share of the fishermen and boaters in the area. At McWilliams Park is always full, and the parking over at Riverside Park, those ramps are very well used.
But you get no income from that.
That's correct.
Is a marina the only thing that could house a restaurant, as far as to be within the recreation limits there?
Well, in order to make it tied in, and again, the city attorney has to weigh in on this, the restaurant's got to be ancillary to whatever it is that you're doing that's going to be recreational in activity. Can't be your primary, because then it's not recreational.
Right.
So you have to tie it in. A marina would be one.
But you could tie it into to the marina.
Yeah, it would be ancillary
in support of the marina.
Yeah, it's ancillary to the marina type of thing. I mean,
or boat dock and fishing on the sides, and
a fishing pier going out. If you could get something with a fishing pier and make it
multiple restaurants, I think would be a push, for that.
Yeah. Probably.
But that's up to council.
Yeah, I don't know about that multiple restaurant thing business. Then it becomes the primary use of the site, and I don't think legally squeeze that in.
Yeah. So one, maybe two max, I think.
Or even two would be a max. I mean, that would be a primary use then.
Yeah. Two's a lot.
You got to tie it to what the type of use, and if you had fishing piers and boat ramps, and you put some type of, for example, what they're doing at the on the beach right now, renting those boats, paddle boats,
paddleboards are very popular.
Yeah,
mm-hmm.
Yeah. I was down there this weekend. It's unbelievable, and those canoe type of activities going out to the. Mm-hmm. I mean, you couldn't get in around that flagpole out there.
I think it's very, very.
If you look at what California does, for instance, on the piers into the ocean, they've got like a fish restaurant, hamburger, pizza kind of place, a walk up even with, maybe some little tables around the side. And then they've got another place over here that sells
$1.50 an hour to park.
Souvenirs. Yeah, that's
I've been
right.
there and done
Don't
that.
even
Souvenirs. Right. And
You
then
didn't just say that, did you?
there's fishing all around, and people walk down and sit on the benches and look at the river, and they make money at that.
The ocean, yeah. I'm sure they make money, and of course that facility probably pays a pretty good fee too. But you're right, and most of those restaurants, on the ones that I've been to, and we've been to several of those because that's where my kids live, and you go out on those piers, those restaurants look like they've been there for years.
Sure.
And it's
They have.
and it's
They were
but
there
you got
50 years ago when I went out there.
seal watching, and you got the
Right.
surfers and all those.
And
other
right
things.
there, you've got the manatees, that come in and out of that one channel there.
As long as we can keep the lagoon clean, keep
Yeah.
the seagrasses going.
Run a little catwalk around there, people could.
So can we get fine money to build a pier?
Well, I think so. I think that's a water activity.
Possibly a FERDAP too.
I think we're going to help apply for that, aren't we, Rob, on the pier that's coming out of Riverside? I
I'm
think.
going to find out from Monty.
Yeah.
On that one. I sent that out.
So I think piers obviously are eligible for that.
Yeah, I think as Paul alluded to in his initial presentation, there's several other associated grants besides just the fine grant.
Yeah, and in the fine grant, the key is, well, you can't really match grants to grants in most cases. They make them ineligible. But the key is that on the fine grants, as Paul put into his information, you can charge fees for that. Now, everybody in Indian River County pays the same fee. You can't make it different. Actually, it's every county that's part of the fine.
Isn't it 12 counties? I think I read that.
I don't know if it's that. But anyway, the key is everybody pays the same, but you are eligible to charge fees for those activities.
Yeah, 12 counties that abut Indian River Lagoon.
Yeah.
So pretty much.
Now, you got to remember, just on the other side of the bridge, you're going to be competing with free piers.
Yeah. But you could put a restaurant. You're going back to Santa Monica Pier or whatever you want to do.
Yeah, exactly. Huntington Beach.
Yeah. San Clemente's got two.
Mm-hmm. And, maybe a sandlot for volleyball. I mean, there's a lot of ways you could design this little park with that kind of use in mind.
Yeah.
All right, other ideas. Keep them coming.
Just before we move on, one thing Patty was able to pull this up. The Sailfish Park that we're talking about houses 3,000 parking spots.
3,000?
3,000.
When I asked about parking last time, I got told, "Hey, the place across the street's going to provide lots of parking, the water treatment facility."
That's 3,000 spaces. Parking spaces normally 8 by 19.
How many acres is that?
I'll let Jim maybe.
Just as a comment, I don't want to answer that part, but if we start building parking spaces, I think the first claim is Ocean Drive.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, again, it depends on, I think, what third-party person would come in and to go to that size. It's obvious that you could put a water park in, but then the question is, where do you get the money? Are you going to get somebody to come in? Maybe a major theme park or somebody like that. I don't know who does Martin County.
Small. Major theme park is way too small.
Way too small.
Way too small.
No, I mean water park. Just
water park, and that's why I'm saying Sailfish is it's a 2 acre water property, but it takes 3,000 parking spots, including what I was looking at was 20 bus areas.
Yep.
When you look at that property and start just kind of going through it, you may be looking comfortably at 500 to 700 parking spots. And I don't think Sailfish is making that much money. I don't know.
I read where it was making.
I'll check into how much they make, but just kind of looking into it.
It said it was making over $1 million a year.
And that's completely clearing your land.
I don't know. There was something that said it was making $1 million a year. I don't know what their cost of operation was.
Right.
Who owns it? The city?
Well, I think that's what we're questioning.
I think it's Martin County. Owned by
Martin County owns it itself.
The county?
That would give one of you guys a full-time job, another full-time job, special event.
Yep.
We can't $30 to go into the water site.
Yeah.
You can do it, Rob, with the staff you have, right?
Oh, I've got that one.
All right. Any other suggested usage, or we're going to take it to the next meeting for this?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, so we'll go on with the next part of the meeting. I did. Push enough buttons and everything works. Okay. So it's the end of the workshop discussion. Thank everybody for participating. You got any more, Jay, on that?
It'd just be nice to have an idea just put forward as an official statement.
Well, I think what we talked about as far as advertising it the next time, will just create a greater sense of urgency. You know, that something will be done, and if you want to participate, type stuff. Would that be fair, Jim?
I think what Jay's saying is if we could pinpoint one or two of those activities and say that's what we're going to do type of thing, or that's what we're moving forward with, subject to change with citizen input.
Well, with the marina idea, do you want to start up with the Marine Commission, just taking that and going now?
Yeah, better get up here, Rito. The answer, if you're going to talk about a marina type of activity, I think the Marine Commission needs to be involved in that conversation. They obviously would be the people responsible for operation of that. And I think so they need to be part of that conversation probably before you determine that's your primary use for it. And between now and whenever your next meeting is, that if it's going to be, 2 or 3 months off, maybe Dick, you could contact the Marine Commission chairman or something and get it on their agenda for discussion. And just let him know that's the type of one of the activities that are being discussed here at this, for that use.
Well, I think there's actually multiple uses of that property.
Yeah.
Of which the marine oriented should be with the Marine Commission.
Yeah. But if that is something that you're pursuing, you might want to make sure the Marine Commission's interested in expanding.
Yeah.
All right, so I'll talk to him.
Yeah.
Let me ask you another question. There was a family that was building a fishing pier.
Mm-hmm. That's one on Riverside, at Riverside Park.
Bodie, is that the name?
No, it's Coppola, wasn't it? Cole Coppola.
That's the one that we're talking about possibly getting a fine grant. They're paying 100% of that, so if we can get a fine grant and they only have to pay 50%, they'll do it. But they're in the fundraising business right now, and I think they have their money pretty well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, because
Barry Siegel's behind that.
Yeah.
Because there really isn't
Coppola
like a
family.
fishing pier anywhere. I mean, you can. Is there?
Oh, yeah.
Where?
Right
underneath
underneath,
the bridge.
right where Riverside.
Oh, yeah, certainly right under the bridge. But I mean, anywhere else. But they get used a lot, right?
Yeah, and this is the one that they're
Point too.
the one they're designing is totally
Probably
fishing.
At Young Park too.
Not up here, though.
No, it's not up here, but it's a great fishing area.
But that's all this is designed for. There'll be no boats pulling up to it and that kind of stuff.
And the Coppola one is going in Riverside Park. Where?
North, Riverside North, north of
It's south of the bridge,
Picnic
60
Pavilion.
Bridge, and
north of the picnic pavilion, the square picnic pavilion. Can you see right there?
Oh, just north.
away from the Memorial Island.
Right.
Oh.
Yeah.
Would that
Well,
affect the island at all? Would that affect the island at all?
No, that's why it's moving to the north, is to keep from interfering with any activity at the.
So maybe there's enough fishing piers and.
Probably not. There's
Is that going to go all the way out to deep water? Because isn't it really shallow in there?
It is. I don't think it's going to go to deep water, but I think it is going to go out some. You'll probably get in the depth wise. You'll probably get maybe 3 to 5 feet. I think.
And weren't they talking 50 to 75 feet, something like that?
Well, that's the length of it.
Yeah.
But I think you're looking at your depth wise of fishing 3 to 5.
You can't have too many fishing piers, though, because
That's
if
what I
there's
said.
fish
Yeah.
there, people will go and fish. I mean, it's just.
Okay, thank you. New business? I don't think we have any. Like old business, we don't have any, other than the power plant. Recreation Director's Matters.
Yeah, real quick. We have the Aerial Antic Circus, which is going to be Thursday, Friday, and Saturday next week over at St. Edward's. Shows are at 7 p.m. And we expect them to run roughly an hour and a half each night.
Which nights are those?
Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, 6th, 7th, and 8th. And then really quickly, the 4th of July went very well, thanks to Tammy, Angie, all those people that sponsored, volunteered, everybody. We really appreciate everybody for all their help with that. We had a great crowd. We had a crowd that was around for a long time. I think they had a good time enjoying music and everything else that went out there, and the rain held out. We didn't have any real significant rain, so it went very well. As a reminder to you guys, Friday, Judy has so nicely put together a little junior staff recognition for our volunteers that have volunteered all summer long, the 14 and 15-year-olds. And that's going to be this Friday at 2 o'clock at the community center. And she said we're going to have cupcakes and cookies. We're keeping it real simple. And it'll be at 2 o'clock on Friday. We just want to thank them and appreciate Judy doing that for them. And then also to let you all know, on Friday at 4 o'clock at JC Beach Park, right by Seaside Krill, they're going to be putting in a time capsule. And that's from the 1715 ship, treasure, the whole pirate thing that's going on this week. I don't know if you're familiar with that, the Pirate Festival and all the...
They could put a coin in the capsule?
I don't know. That would be nice. I have a feeling it would get dug up if that happened, though. And that's all I have.
All right, and I don't have anything. Members' matters.
I have something.
So let's start with Angie first and just work down.
I don't have anything.
Go, Sue.
The mural on A1A at Bethel Creek House is finished. If you haven't seen it, you should take a trip by there and look at it. The dedication is going to be on the 19th of August at 9:30 in the morning. So it would be nice if people could come and be part of that celebration. That's all I have.
Yeah, if we can get a reminder on the email.
And a thank you to all
on that dedication
who made that happen. Great job to all.
Yeah.
Start with red next time, though.
And that was pretty funny, but she could not be dissuaded.
I think the colors came out real well. I've only seen it once.
Whatever happened to the edition we were going to do the Charles Park?
The Charles Park edition we have placed in there for the 1920 to begin the process. We were tentatively approved, of course, with council meeting in September, and the 5-year plan of having that start to happen in the 1920.
I took some school kids
with
there
permitting
this year.
and everything else.
Thank the guy that works there. He's nonstop keeping that nice.
Good. I'll let Monty know that.
And then congratulations to Tammy, chosen as the clerk of the clerks for the state. I mean, she's top winner.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that. Congratulations.
Charles Park, isn't there money for engineering right now?
No, not until
Next year's budget?
1920.
Nothing till then.
Right.
Okay. Go ahead, Greg.
No, that's what I was going to talk about was Charles Park, but it is going to be 20. I knew it was coming, but I thought it might be a little quicker, but maybe not. So that's it.
Bobby?
No.
Your chance? No, you've been quiet the whole meeting.
It's intimidating the first couple of
It
times.
All right, the next meeting is August 11th, and tentatively, I think the rowing club is coming back again, right?
Yes.
It's still on, tentatively.
What time?
We'll go back to 4 o'clock. It's just going to be that should be a regular meeting. And then as I said in the beginning of this thing, probably try and do a workshop again in like November on the power plant property. How's that sound?
The marina group.
Well, I'm going to talk to the chairman and see what he wants to do. Because eventually, when you get the water issues, I think that's more Marina Commission than the Recreation Commission as far as the usage of that bordering property, if they want to use it, marina related. You're shaking your head. Body language. I mean, as you know, in a council meeting, you sit here and you watch pretty much everything going on. So, but I think it would be, my suggestion is we separate ourselves from the Marina Commission as far as usage of that property. If that bordering property is marine related, we're not really a Marine Commission.
No, sir, but I think that you need to keep in mind the total scope of the property. And just because if you decided sometime at the end of the day, the Marine Commission, A, should be part of that discussion, but B, is they may decide that, they have no interest in it. But you're going to have ancillary uses, I would presume, to that on that site, because they don't need 17 acres of ground.
Yes.
They need 17 acres of water.
Well, and this is just, thinking out loud, but maybe the next meeting, just go ahead and run it like we're doing this one, just to see if there are any other proposals to use that land, because it appears right now most of it is marine related.
We could certainly invite them to attend, and if they have, something to add, we could listen.
I think they were invited to this one, weren't they, Tammy?
I think the key there is to have, if Dick can talk to the chairman, have them put it on the agenda to see if there's any interest at all. They may come back and say, hey, guys, we got our hands full.
Or maybe I'll just go before the Marine Commission with what we have with the,
there you go,
the suggestions that we have so far, and see where they want to run with it.
That'd be fine.
be involved.
Yeah, some way just to engage them in the conversation, because I think before you designate that as a potential use, that you need to have them at least sign on to it.
Well, I don't see, with money restrictions and everything else, they're being able to utilize all of the perimeter, very honestly. But yeah. I think they have first choice.
Just a function of money.
A function of money.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost life, isn't it? Okay, anything else? Thank you all. We're adjourned.